Uh, this is a podcast that's a recovery podcast, and what we talk about here is all things recovery or lack thereof, depending on who you are and how you roll. Uh, but I ain't judging. But this today, my special guest is Ann Fisher. She is all the way on the East Coast. She's in which part of Massachusetts?
Western Massachusetts.
Western Massachusetts. Welcome to the corner, Ann.
Thank you.
Ann's a colleague in the field. She's kind of a samurai. But anyway, that's just my opinion, and maybe others too. So, Ann, usually we like to delve into your past and kind of just figure out where you grew up, where you were born, where you grew up, and then we'll get into the other stuff, and then we'll get into the recovery part. So who's Ann Fisher? Like, where were you born?
So I was born in Haydenville, Massachusetts. Population about 2,500. Parents still live there. It's a wonderful place to be. I live 10 minutes away now in Northampton, Massachusetts. Raised in a middle-class, wonderful family. My older brother has been a police officer since he was born. He's still a cop now of about 18 years. He's great. He's out in the Boston area. I have a deceased younger brother who died at age 12 of brain cancer. Always part of my story. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so that's how I grew up here. I went through school. I attended some college, worked in ER for 9 years.
ER? Like just at a regular hospital or something?
Yeah, I worked at our local ER here.
Okay. So growing up, like in high school, junior high school, all that stuff, like did you have a normal childhood? Did you have siblings?
Yeah, so I feel like I had a very normal childhood. My mother worked for the VA, and my father owned a logging company, and he's a truck driver also. So it's a pretty normal upbringing, other than the fact that my younger brother was diagnosed at 17 months when I was about 6 or 7 years old with brain cancer, terminal. Mm-hmm. Lived to be 12 years old before he passed. I was 17 at the end of my high school year. So that was kind of hard and kind of set me on this path of not necessarily destruction, because I have a wonderful family support, but I was definitely partying more than I should have, drinking more than I should have, didn't really care about college. My older brother was very set on his career to be a police officer, and he's been very successful doing so. So as the middle child of a deceased younger sibling, I was a little bit lost, you could say.
And so that was kind of traumatic, obviously, for you, losing your brother.
Yeah, I think the most traumatic part for me and my family is that he, at 17 months, he told us he had 2 days to live, and then there were he went through chemo and radiation, he lived, and then he went, he was in remission. He had another bout of cancer at about age, I think 8 or so, I'm not sure, but he was in remission again from that. And then age 10, he was diagnosed with a terminal glioblastoma. Mm-hmm. And so we had been going to Boston for treatment for him. My parents went everywhere. They went to Texas. They went to the National Institute of Health. They went to Spain, anything they could do to help him live. So at the end, it was hard. I mean, it's hard to see a child 12 years old die. We see patients all the time in this industry kind of risking their life playing Russian roulette. And, here, I remember my little brother who would have done anything to live. So, that obviously is traumatic and part of my story and what made me who I am.
Sure. So when you said you were partying, are we talking like high school partying, like just going out and drinking with friends, or what was it?
Yeah, it was pretty much going out and drinking with friends. We're from a rural community, so there were a lot of bonfires, a lot of drinking in the woods on the weekends, things like that. It wasn't too dramatic. I experimented with cocaine with a high school boyfriend that I had. Wasn't my thing. Mm-hmm. I really was, as I was getting a little bit older and realizing when I went into work in the emergency department, obviously I wasn't doing those things. Then I realized that I felt like that was what I wanted to do, is emergency medicine. Mm-hmm. So.
And in a town that small, this is the same town that you talked about, 2,500 people, right?
No, so Haydenville has 2,500 people. I live in
Oh,
Northampton, so we have a pretty large hospital here that's
okay.
affiliated with Mass General.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Then what happened? Like you said, you didn't really want to go to college. Why?
I mean, I went to like our community college. I just wasn't, I don't know. I think that I wasn't the best student all the time because I was more socializing with people.
Mhm.
And so I just wasn't, I don't know. Some people just don't want to go the route of college, but once I wanted to get into, more of like emergency medicine stuff and want my career path, I thought was going to be a nurse doing pediatric oncology. And I learned that I don't want to do that at all. So I did some college then. I became an EMT, and so I was, working in the trenches in the ER for years. Really enjoyed it. Saw a lot. And then more recently, I did go back to school. So.
Okay, so when you were doing the ER work and all that, did you have like a normal life? The partying was kind of done? Like there was really, you were just living normally?
Yeah, I mean, I met my son's father at midget wrestling when I was 20 at a bar. So there's that. So we have a 14-year-old child.
Okay.
So we met at midget wrestling, and I think once, I was pregnant at age 22, and I come from a family that's really has really strong values. And so once I was having a child, it was like, this is when you need to like really get yourself together and like live a normal life. I was never a person that like would come home at night and like drink wine, to unwind. It was more, my addiction came more after I sustained an injury. And I was prescribed a ton of opiates, and knowing better, and I still, it's hard to like talk about those kinds of things as somebody that worked in healthcare, because had I had or felt comfortable just asking somebody for help, I don't think that my life would have led to where it did, although I'm grateful to be where I am today.
So the injury was some kind of bodily injury that required you to have to resort to being prescribed opiates.
Yeah.
And
So it took a while to recover. Also, I think something a lot of women don't talk about, postpartum depression was a huge thing for me. And I was prescribed Valium for that, which is, now we know that isn't the best course of treatment.
Sure.
But, it was hard to talk about things like that. And, being a new mother and also working full time and things, it just became a really different life for me pretty quickly, to go from being young and, partying and having all these friends to being a 22-year-old parent.
You had to grow up really fast.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So then the medications that they were prescribing you, was it mostly opiates? Was there any Xanax or anything like that in the mix? Any kind of benzodiazepines?
So it was all opiates. I mean, they would prescribe, like the oxycodone, the 5-325s, but then they would prescribe like the 20 milligram, just straight oxycodone on top of it for breakthrough pain. And I started realizing, like, once I wasn't in pain anymore, like physically, I was still in this emotional pain. So I continued to take the medication. And I remember vividly when I tried to stop because I like ran out or something, and I was just like, I felt like I was going to die. I felt like deathly sick.
How fast do you think you developed a dependency towards it, both emotionally and physically? Like, was it almost instantly?
Almost instantly, because it, like, with a pill, like giving me a pill that like numbed everything out, not only the pain, but also the trauma of working in a place like an emergency department where, you do see some good, but most of it is not. And so when you have to do what we have to do to save lives in an emergency department like that, we've got 5 college campuses around. There was a lot of trauma, a lot of, we would see a lot. And so what it also allowed me to do is kind of block out that pain too, and not remember that, yeah, like, I'm giving CPR to a 3-month-old baby that passes away. And then the next, 6 a.m. rolls around and I'm going home and making my 2-year-old breakfast. So it's like, how do you kind of go from one to the other? So it helps with not only like my physical pain, but my emotional pain.
Did you, prior to this, I mean, minus the partying that you did whenever you did, like when you were younger, I think that like partying is what a lot of adolescents do when they're in high school and all that. And some college students obviously party too, but like,
Yeah.
did you already have an addictive personality? Do you think like, I mean, some people get into an accident and they get prescribed pain medication. And so they take it as directed and then they don't take it anymore. But like, do you think like you had like the addictive brain to where like you just felt it and you're like, oh my God, this is everything. I need more of this?
Yeah, I mean, when I was in my late teens, when I actually did go to college, I was probably like 18, 19. I went to community college. I couldn't focus in class, and so my primary care doctor prescribed me Adderall, like they do, like candy. And I started taking that, and I was like, wow, I can function. Like this is great. I can function, but I can have no emotions. My father is an alcoholic. He got sober when I was about 6 years old. So I don't really remember much of that. It doesn't run on my mother's side at all, but yeah, definitely like, shopping, money. I always had to have the best cars, the best clothes, the best shoes, the best bags, everything. So it wasn't just about like a pill or something like that for me. It was whatever would fill that void that I needed to fill at the time.
Sure. So this is a really interesting thing that you just brought up as far as the Adderall goes. So like I've worked in the field of addiction for almost 14 years now, right? Almost my whole entire sobriety. And
Aging yourself there.
well, you had a baby at 22 and your kid's 14, so you aged yourself earlier. But okay, we won't go
I'm
there.
36. Thank you very much.
Okay, and you look good for your age. You look great. You look like you should be right where you're at.
I know. Thank you.
Do I look like I'm 50?
You look like 52.
This girl, we be joking all the time together. Okay, so with that said, back to the Adderall. How do I say this? Do you wish that the doctor would have given you an alternative rather than the Adderall to be able to focus better?
I wish that my provider would have told me that I was being prescribed legal meth.
It is legal meth. It's medical meth.
I wish that she would have told me the side effects and things like that instead of, and I would see this all the time. Like I worked with an amazing group of physicians in the ER. Can't say enough good things about them. But when it comes to like the primary care doctor that I was seeing, it was like, well, what do you need? You can't focus. Here's a prescription for this. And when that did work and made me focus, but also made me not sleep for 3 days or eat. And like,
were you abusing it or were you using it as directed?
No, I was using it. Back then I was using it as directed.
As directed. Yeah, but you couldn't sleep even using it as directed?
No, on 30 milligrams of extended release daily. Because like my body, I don't know that I necessarily had ADHD. It was like, well, you can't focus and here's some symptoms. So instead of trying something that was like a non-addictive medication that, we can use, like even like a Strattera or something like that. It was just like, here's this prescription for Adderall. This will help you get through school and do your work. It wasn't really prescribed or like told to me like the long-term effects of that medication.
And the dependency that can come out of like eventually, the addictive dependency that one can obtain as a result of using it regularly. Yeah,
and I like my face was breaking out. I looked like I was like on meth or something. Like I was like, my face is breaking out, like scabs on my face.
Well, you kind of were on meth. I mean, it's just like it's cleaned up meth.
It changes you like biophysically. Like I used to go to the gym back then every single day, and I stopped going to the gym because I was short of breath. So there were like all of these kind of side effects that I didn't expect. However, I wanted to be successful in school. So like I was trying to balance it. And I trusted in my provider when I was like 18 years old that this is the medication I should be taking.
They
Um,
have out here in California. They have asked me in a couple of different colleges and like universities to come and speak with professionals in the field, some therapists, some addictionologists, and then some people that have like hands-on experience, like actual people that were addicted, to come and talk to people in college campuses about kids that are not kids anymore, young adults that are prescribed Adderall or the ones that get into opiates and things like that. So, and for me, what's interesting is the way it works. Like a lot of little kids that are super hyper get addicted Adderall or Ritalin. I mean, it was Ritalin back in the day. I believe it's Adderall now, and maybe Vyvanse and things like that. But to calm them down. But like for the adult, it's to help them focus or hyper focus for that matter, and be able to be productive in like a scholastic setting, right? But I have seen, and this is a hot topic because people will argue with me about this, the fact that
yeah.
um, it should be prescribed to certain people so that they can focus better. But what I've seen in the rehab setting, especially like when I've worked like on the front lines, been in groups
Mhm.
and talked to people and like really got their backstory of who they were, a lot of them that become full-blown heroin addicts, fentanyl addicts, meth addicts at one time in their life, in their childhood, were prescribed Ritalin, Adderall, these stimulants, which I believe that this is what I feel, that this is kind of like where the addiction could have the onset, like it was the beginning of what had become something to where they were always depending on something to make them feel good. I've also worked very closely with people who come into my care that are just primary Adderall addicts. Like they're just addicted to Adderall. They've been prescribed it for years. They couldn't see life in any other way. And then they have been abusing it for years and years, to even like prescribed, or they resorted to like finding it in other ways, like whether it be the dark web or a dealer or something like that. But it most certainly is. I mean, that's where it started with Adderall for you, and then it became an accident or something like that happened to where you had an injury, and then the opiates. So as far as the opiates, like how long did that addiction go? Like, was it carrying on for?
Yeah, so I was prescribed Adderall from age 18 or 19 until um about, I mean, I think about 27-ish. So I was on it for a very long time.
Wow.
Um yeah, and I also worked overnights in the last 4 years that I was in the ER. And so like how do I had a toddler, my partner worked during the day. And so it's like how do you function and do all of that? As much as family support that I had, it's still like I want to raise my child, you know. Um but like, so I was doing that, and then I was prescribed, I had a 2-year, so it started at age 26 with the injury. And I was finally arrested, which saved my life, on when I was 29 on December 12th of 2014.
Do you mind elaborating on why you were arrested?
I'll go into it a little bit. There was a lot that went behind it. I would have never done the things that I had done. I'm more like a retired street pharmacist, if you may. I would not have done those things had I been in a sober state of mind. I was so addicted myself that like I had to do anything. And my family didn't know, my parents didn't know, nobody knew that I had a problem. And like, I think that was the hardest thing. Like, had somebody
How did you hide it?
I mean, I guess I'm just really good at those kinds of things.
You mastered the double life. You
Um,
had mastered, or so you thought.
yeah, I mean, but then it like, so there was some prescription fraud there. And so when my house was raided, there was nothing found in my house or anything, but I was charged with quite a few charges to just try and like get anything to stick, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me a long time, but I'm very grateful for being arrested.
Mm-hmm.
The police officer that drove me to the police like station where I had to be held as a female, which I was only there for 40 minutes because like I wouldn't even sit down because I was wearing citizen jeans, and it was gross. But like the police officer that drove me there actually like knew some of my family and had this conversation with me about how well I was raised, how she knows my family. And she's like, let this be a lesson to you. Do whatever it takes to get sober. You're not this person. She's like, this is going to be a really hard process for you, but you can get through it. Because at that time, because my family didn't know. I'm like, how am I going to tell my family that I'm even addicted to drugs? Never mind, I just got arrested. How am I going to tell my brother that, who is such a respected police officer? You know, so it was like so hard to like comprehend anything other than me like ending my own life, honestly, at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, my best friend at the time's mother actually blocked me in my driveway after I told my mom, and she's, you know, she's been going to AA for years. Her name is Piper, and she's wonderful. And she blocked me in my driveway. I don't even know about AA. My parents were like, you don't even look like a drug addict. I was like, I don't even know what a drug addict looks like. Like, you know, I'm sorry, Mom. Like, you know, so they didn't know what to do with me, but Piper did. So she took me into my first AA meeting, which was a women's meeting in a church basement in Cummington with about 10 older women.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember like crying because I had never identified with people as much as I did then. You know, here in Western Mass, we have about 87 public detox beds. I had to wait 3 days on like a call list. My family knew nothing about like private treatment, thank God. But I had to wait 3 days to go to detox. So, and I was detoxing from benzodiazepines also.
Mm-hmm.
So I did go to a public detox. I was there for 10 days. I went cold turkey except phenobarbital because they were worried about risk of seizure. But I refused to take Suboxone because I didn't want to be addicted to something else. And something that I really got out of that detox was that this wonderful counselor, Nancy, told me, like, do not make friends here. Like, you know, don't make friends here. And also it's like she would talk to me about like the importance of my recovery and not just relying on another. Like, I believe in MAT completely for patients who overdose multiple times. I'm a complete supporter of it. Mm-hmm. However, like in my situation, I felt like I could do it cold turkey, like as long as I'm in a medical setting. Mm-hmm. You know, like it wasn't like, you know, how it was at a place like Swift River that I helped open back in 2016. Like, we didn't have that clinical support. It was literally an inpatient hospital. So I'm very grateful for it.
Your opiate addiction didn't transfer into other forms of opiates like heroin or?
No.
Okay. So it was just straight medicated, like medication.
I would take so when I was in detox also in that unit, people would be like, you're not even like a real drug addict, because I would take like a quarter of a perk 30 every 2 hours to not be sick. And I was like, I am a drug addict. I'm just way smarter than you. So like, we can have that conversation. But yeah, no, I was in, if I didn't have the finances to purchase those medications, I feel like I would have been in the streets, like shooting dope. Like, I don't know where my life would have led. Mm-hmm. Like, thank God, you know, because thousands of dollars a week, you know, perk 30s at that time were $25 to $30 each. Mm-hmm. And now it's all pressed fentanyl. So people don't even have the chance to recover. It's just dying, you know, so.
This is also an interesting topic. So when the fact that there are people out there now, or have been for a few years actually, youngsters, some that aren't so young, getting their hands on, and we won't go into the fact that some of the stuff is pressed with fentanyl, because that obviously is stuff that they're finding in other areas. But I'm talking like prescribed medications. Mm-hmm. Kids are smoking this stuff, like straight up smoking pills. You never took it to that level.
No, yeah. I literally would just swallow them. I guess since I like didn't have friends that did drugs, like I had like mom friends that like went to the park with me and stuff, and I was like, going to Disney on Ice and stuff. Like I was like a normal mom with
Right.
like a normal career and a beautiful home, and it was a huge secret. But had I found that like group of like people that were doing that, I don't know what I would have done. I probably would have done some of that stuff, I guess. Like,
And it's interesting you bring up like moms. There's a lot of mothers that are like housewives that end up becoming prescribed Xanax, for example,
mhm.
and they take it to take the edge off to be able to feel better, but then eventually they develop a dependency upon it, and then they wonder why their moods are so up and down, and like why do like I've now I can't feel right unless I'm on this, right? So like I'll take an extra one, or I'll take a few extra ones and things like that. So now looking back, like, did you have any other friends that were caught up in any kind of addiction that were those
No,
mothers, or were you the only one?
I was the only one. I had friends that drank, and I drank at this candlelight party in 2012, and it was a disaster. And so, like after that, like I did not want to drink alcohol anymore. But like I wasn't like, oh, I'm sober. I just didn't want to be messy because I'm a very like type A person, and like I want things a certain way.
You? No, never. Okay, maybe a little.
But no, I didn't, or I didn't even know if they did. But since I have gotten sober, and my story, since I'm from such a small town, like like it became a little bit public. But the good part about this, and the police officers, fire department, people that I worked with that reached out to me after would hear me speak at meetings and stuff, would be like, "Oh my God, like it's so good to see you. We had no idea what happened to you."
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I just wish that stigma in healthcare could, be, I don't even know how to like word it appropriately right now, but I wish that there was more that we could do to, um, you know, you can't, like, ending a stigma is not something we're going to be able to do just right
Why do you think there's a stigma? Why? Like,
now. I mean, even working in the ER, and I'll speak for myself.
mhm.
But patients would come in and they were frequent flyers. What do they want? They've got back pain. They've got dental pain. They were here yesterday. They have a primary
Med
care
seeking.
doctor, of course. But
Yeah.
like, having sympathy for that when it's like we have patients coming in cardiac arrest. So how do I go from having to deal with patients or like, an acute MI or like a stroke? That's my priority.
Mm-hmm.
And so when patients would come in med seeking, I know that it was hard for our doctors who are so busy to have that conversation with them. And a lot of them are very good about it. Like, hey, we've seen you here multiple times. You
Mm-hmm.
need to go to a dentist. You need to go to your primary care doctor. I'll give you 5 or 10 perks to hold you over, but this is it.
Mm-hmm.
And that led to the prescription monitoring program that I worked with, the the DA that was prosecuting me. I worked on that team to help just form like a prescription monitoring program so providers could look up where patients are getting these prescriptions from, because
Mm-hmm.
they're getting them from multiple prescribers. And so when ER docs can access like that patients are getting, prescriptions all over, because we didn't have that back in those days.
Right.
So we didn't know that they had just gotten 30 Percocet from Franklin Hospital down the street.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, no, I mean, yeah. So I had a stigma myself. A kid came in like missed his methadone dose at 6 a.m. and I was like, well, that's nice. I had to get up at 4:30 and feed my baby, bring him to my parents' house, and like now I've got to work all day. So do I feel bad? I mean, no. But like today, would I? Absolutely. It's like we all live different lives, and I think I've definitely learned a lot of empathy working in this.
Sure. I think through your own struggles, you also just like suddenly learn that there's got to be compassion for people that do develop an addictive lifestyle, and we don't just view them as like drug addicts, like they're just so like there's no hope for them. That's why a lot of stigmas exist, is because people just view you a certain way. I remember when I had gotten in trouble way back in the day before I even wanted to be sober. The police had raided my house for other stuff, took me in, booked me
Like what, Pej?
methamphetamines, cooking it. That's what they thought I was going to do. I actually was going to, but like I hadn't got to it yet. But
Did
still,
you
they
blow up your
found.
house at all? Did you blow up your house at all cooking meth?
No, I didn't get that far. Luckily, or I wouldn't be here. But they were telling me. I remember I was getting booked for as a drug offender in my part of town, and the sheriff, the way she talked to me, she's like, "So, how long you been a doper?" I'm like, "Oh my God, what kind of a word is that? That's such a like sheriff term, right?" I'm like,
Yeah.
"What are you talking about?" "Oh, you like the methamphetamine? Well, you know what they put in that stuff?" And I'm like, "What? Rat poison and all kinds of other chemicals like red phosphorus." I'm like, "Great, my head's like, great, give me more." Like, I don't care. Like, that's why I love this shit, because it gets me going. It helps me maintain like my addictive lifestyle. But I definitely felt looked down upon rather than any kind of compassion. These days they bust you and it's like a slap on the wrist, if even that. At least in California, like they're more lenient. There's more understanding. People are getting more rehabilitated. So I wanted to ask you, like, when you ended up going to that detox and all, was that your one and only time of going to treatment?
Yeah, one and done, just like my kid. One and done.
And you were how old then?
I was Jesus, 29.
29, and you got sober at 29.
Yeah.
And then how long were you in rehab?
I was there for 10 days because of the risk of seizure, because of I had really high blood pressure coming off. First of all, I lied to them about using Xanax because like I was just terrified. And it's funny that you said that about like the dope fiend stuff, because I was in an ER at Berkshire Medical Center, and like as a person working in an ER, like I never expected to go to an ER. And we called the doc came in and he's like, "Oh, you're dope sick." I was like, "You're dope sick. Like, what are you? You're telling me I'm dope sick?" Like, I'm looking at the scribe. I'm like, "Don't put that in my chart. I'm not dope sick."
Right.
But like, it was like I was there for 10 days, and I did a phenobarbital taper, and then I was referred out to a public IOP it's called Clinical Support Options here in Northampton. They were wonderful. I continued going to the weekly recovery meeting, even though it was like, it's like an early recovery meeting. I went for a whole year. Was
it like an outpatient that you were in?
Yeah. So my parents actually moved me out of my home in Northampton. And so I was so furious, but like they have like an upstairs of their home, which is like an
Why were you furious? Because you wanted to go back home?
My house. Like, I'm like, you can't do this to me. Like, what are you talking about? But like, I was just so selfish at that point and not seeing the full picture there. And I was so isolated that I needed my family. Like my aunt and uncle and cousin live next door. My parents still, like, I love them so much. And I didn't have that. And I really needed to be around them more than I knew. And so I was fortunate enough that like my brother rented my house, and then one of my friends rented my house until I was able to, I just moved back into my home in Northampton in 2019. And it was like, I was mad because I would go to meetings. So they're like, go to your 90 and 90. And I was scared, to go to those meetings and running into people that I knew, thinking they're judging me, but like at the same time, I'm like, we're all here for the same reason.
Right.
But yeah, I did way more than 90. I was going to like 2 meetings a day most days. And my parents, luckily, and my partner allowed me to not work for those 2 years. Like having 17 felonies and 15 misdemeanors like on your record isn't really that easy to get a job. But
oh my God, that's a lot. Oh my God.
You're coiffed, okay? Yeah. But like honestly, my first, like when I went to work with addiction campuses, I had been on pretrial probation. They got my Corey back, and they really went to bat for me because they got to know me and my strengths. And my director of operations, Scott Kenfield, was able to like write a letter stating to why they're willing to employ me, even though I had those charges, even though they were going to be quaffed in 2 years. There was still that risk that if I, failed drug tests or anything, I could be going away for 30 years and never seeing, like, that was my fear. Like, am I ever going to hug my son again? Like, he's my world.
Mm-hmm.
My parents are my world. So it's like, I would have done anything at that point, but I was so grateful for them to give me that opportunity, and really prove myself. But yeah, like, but now.
So when you got sober, if you didn't have all the felonies, would you have wanted to go back and work in the ER, or was it because that the fact that you had the felonies, you thought that you weren't going to be employable by, like, no one's going to hire you, so you went in the direction of working in, was Addiction Camps as a treatment center back east?
Yeah, so I mean, they were a national treatment center or company based out of Nashville. They own Treehouse in Texas, where Micah Petty obviously worked. It's how we met. They also had Turning Point in Mississippi, the Bluffs in Ohio, and then Swift River in the Berkshires in Mass, which is a facility that I helped with a team of 33 open, and then we eventually expanded to 112 beds private there. But no, so the ER, I would still have, like, I could hear the ambulance bell still in my head sometimes, because you never know what's coming. And like, I thrive off chaos a lot. However, it's not always good for you. And I developed this fear of, like, I can't have people sitting behind me. Like, there's certain things that I've had to identify within my, like, PTSD, that from working in that field for so long. It's a very burnt out field. I worked there through the avian flu crisis, nothing like COVID. I don't even know how they're doing it. I pray for them, but it's just, it was just a very toxic environment for people. Because, like, we were essentially a family, especially overnight, because, we're on our own. We had to respond to all the codes throughout the hospital, responding to a code white in a nursery when we can't even get through the doors because they forgot to unlock them. That sense of, like, hope, like, you want to go save a baby and you can't, like, they forgot to unlock the doors. Like, I couldn't feel that anymore. And I also developed the sense, like, I couldn't have people that close to me because I was afraid. And so, yeah, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I didn't want to do that. It just, that kind of, like, fell into my lap, and I'm super grateful for everything I learned there and the wonderful people I met there, but it's, not my thing.
So now what are you doing? I mean, as far as, obviously you're still working in treatment, and you're helping people get into treatment nationally. This is what you do. This has become your forte. Like, there's no looking back at trying to go work in healthcare unless this is the type of healthcare that you've kind of found your niche, right?
Yeah, I mean, so I started out, at Swift River as a detox program director. I was very into, like, the licensure piece of it, and then becoming the director of admissions on site. I really thrived in that position because I do like chaos. I like being able to coordinate that chaos of, bed Tetris when we're absolutely full. And really, it was like air traffic control is what I did. I came out into business development because so many people locally were reaching out to me for help that I couldn't do both. And so it made more sense for me to move out to business development and then nationally. But I miss working one-on-one with patients. A goal, like, my true goal really is to do some, I don't even like to talk about this, but I'm really interested in doing, like, forensics, behavioral analysis in, like Bridgewater State Hospital, which is a state hospital for the criminally insane.
Where did that interest originate? That's a hell of a, that's crazy awesome. Like, why that?
I feel like I read people all the time because, like, you know, when you're working in a treatment center in like a leadership position, and you're trying to get to the bottom of things, like you really have to read into people and like what's going on. It's been hard since COVID because, like, you know, too, we're on the phones a lot. It's harder to read people through the phone. But a lot of people in my family have been in law enforcement and things like that. So I don't know why it appeals to me so much. I feel like I really like reading people and understanding the depth of like how they became this way, and like if there's things that we can do to, people suffer in those situations too. If there's things that we can do and learn from their situations, why not? It doesn't have to be a terrible existence.
That is one of the best things I've heard in a long time, and I totally relate. One of the reasons I say that is I think we're a lot alike. I think that's why we be vibing, because we're both A-type personalities. We both had our own personal struggles with addiction or whatever happened, or the traumas that happened for us in our lives. But I say this often, like, and in my recovery process, like I love to learn people. I
Yeah.
love to learn all different types of people. I've gotten past viewing people through a certain scope, like to where they're like, I don't like that person because he's this way or that way. I needed to get out of my own way and start seeing what it is about me that doesn't like certain people, and just putting that aside and actually wanting to see what about that person is it that I don't like, and why is that? And then on top of that, what about them could I like, or what about them stands out? What are their strengths? How can I empower that person to hopefully change their lives? I have a lot of friends and a lot of people that are chronic relapsers, and some of them appear to, like, some would deem them as people that are beyond human aid, and perhaps they truly are. I mean, if they I mean, some of them may never get better. Some of them are on the brinks of being completely shot out. Some of them are fucking shot out. Some of them like are well on their way, and let's hope that they don't become shot out. But like I believe miracles happen, and sometimes when I often hear their stories, or they tell me bits and pieces, or if they tell me the whole shebang, like exactly like what's happened to them in their lives, like it all makes sense. I'm like, fuck, really? Like that happened to you? Like I would be getting loaded too. But like I also want to give them hope and let them know, like, you don't have to live that way anymore. Like you can turn it around. We're here for you whenever you're ready. Like I'm always here for you. And it's a lot of people don't know that I'm an interventionist. Like, do you do interventions too?
Me too. Thank you very much. If you would have read my signature on our emails, maybe you would know that. I'm not sure.
I read it, but I just want people to know. I was trying to just kind of like slick that way. And I know you're an interventionist, but like I think some of the most powerful experiences for us as interventionists happen like right when we're in it. Like forget about the pre-intervention's great, putting together like the family or the loved ones or the friends that come together to help their loved one, but like when you're in it, and the amount of emotion that goes into it, and the fact that like we have to keep neutral there, like we can't start crying with the family, right? But there's a lot of fucking emotion, and a lot of people will ask me, I'm sure they ask you too a lot of times, like, I don't know how you do it. Like it's probably not, it's not cut out for people. It's not cut out for everybody. A lot of people can't really handle that. But I think like after being trained and being on the front lines and doing it enough, you start to read a room depending on where you go. And right the second you walk in, you know pretty much what you're in for. And then sometimes just watching like the way it kind of takes form, like not everybody's going to want to get help right away, but the art of intervention is to be able to intervene on their lives and open up the idea that, listen, now you can't say people don't care about you, because people care about you, right? And if they sometimes look at you like, well, who the hell are you, right? Well, I'm just here, just assisting, just trying to help out, trying to show, like, what do you want to do about your addiction problem? What do you want to do about your alcoholism?
I'm not here for fun.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously, like you can't, and there's no excuses now. And you have to like word it right and say the right thing so that you don't offend or hurt someone's feelings, or tell them like, you don't want them to be like, you know what, fuck you, like get out of this room. I don't want to deal with this guy. Right. I've had people do that. Right. But
people do that in the ER all the time. I had a guy like throw a chair at me. I just like shut the door, and I like called Northampton PD. I'm like, yo, chair just got thrown at me. You mind coming by? Like, people like, and I think that's probably where like my interest in that kind of like behavioral analysis, like for the criminally insane, or even at like Shirley Max or something, people who are institutionalized for life.
Mhm.
Like, I feel like people are so angry because of how they're treated a lot.
Sure.
And so it's like, you don't have, like, it takes a lot more to be mean to people than it does to just be kind.
Sure.
And I know that, like, as an assertive woman, I know that sometimes I can come off a little bit like questionable on the niceness. Sorry, I'm trying to like make you be able to hear me. But I'm only, it's because I'm passionate.
Mhm.
And it's because I've seen too many people die. I was working with 2 families in the past 3 weeks whose children have passed.
Right.
And so it's not something that I play with, and it's like, I would see patients in the ER all the time.
Mhm.
Like, what made you get to this point where you're slamming your head against the wheel of a stretcher?
Right.
It's like, what, like, can we like reverse back and like see, is this substance use disorder? And I would do this even in the detox unit. Once somebody's detox, is this substance use disorder or is this true mental health? And
Mhm.
like, from here, where do we go? And that's why I'm grateful to have psychiatric providers within, treatment facilities also.
That can determine. Yeah.
Yeah, because, it's like, if we can make people more comfortable and live out their life where they are safer for our communities, unfortunately, like, that has to happen. And if you can make it so that people aren't so bitter and angry to be there all the time,
Mhm.
it doesn't have to be such a terrible environment. People can thrive in jail. People go to college in jail.
Mhm.
Like, I don't know. I tend to work better with males for some reason. Like,
Mhm.
I do work a lot with women, like mothers in recovery too, but I feel like I'm more effective with males because I do have like a more masculine energy.
Mhm.
And so, like, I've gone into the Section 35 unit here and spoken and brought in great speakers there. But like, that's kind of where my passion is kind of going towards.
Mhm.
I think it'll be years before I do that because I really do love what I do. But it's not like I can't do both, I guess.
You're a powerful force. I appreciate you coming on here. I want to ask you something before we sign off. You told me like a lot of people ask you to be on their podcast and sometimes you don't do it.
I never,
Why did you come on here? Why me?
because I don't want to get in trouble by like Brandon or something. Um,
That's not why. I don't believe that.
I see your drive. I see that you're helping a lot of people. I appreciate that. I don't feel like you're in this for, so many people are in this for like a financial gain. That's not why I'm in this.
Mhm.
And so when people want to bring you on because they think that like whoever they think you are is going to bring more people to refer to them, I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
And I feel like with genuine connections with people, like we've spoken, and like there's patients that I can't place in California with really difficult policies.
Mhm.
And you've never said to me, no, I'm not, I don't have time for that.
Right.
Had you said that to me, I definitely wouldn't be sitting here right now. Just so you know.
It's interesting that you just brought that. I appreciate your kind words. It's really nice coming from you. Like that means a lot, especially coming from you. But I must say this: this is a trip. Like I went to West Coast Symposium. Like what was it, a week and a half ago?
Way.
And a friend of mine who is actually an interventionist with his partner. The two of them are like the dynamic duo. Two guys that do a lot of interventions. He pulled me aside on one of the nights, and he's like, "Hey, I want to talk to you about something. I wasn't going to talk about this publicly, but I don't mind. I really don't mind because I know what I stand for." But he said, "I want to ask you something. Like, earlier today when you were like walking through the hall, there was a guy that was standing and talking to me, and as you walked by, he said, 'That's Pej. He's a body broker. He works with body brokers.'" And I looked at him, and he goes, "I just wanted to bring it to your attention, like, just in case." And I said, "Dude, like, do you think I'm a body broker?" He goes, "You know what, Pej? Like, really, we've been accused of that on the ethics page. Me and my partner have been accused of being body brokers." And I go, "Well, I know you guys, and I know you guys do good work, and I know you're not body brokers. So, what? It's not so much that I'm bothered that somebody would say that to you, but if I was standing in your position and somebody came to me and said that about you, I would question the person. Like I would think that they're perhaps projecting something, that maybe they have something to hide. Because if we're doing this for the right reasons, just like you said, and it's not just about personal gain, like if somebody goes out and wants to pollute our industry with just bullshit jargon, like just stuff that they're pulling out of stuff, I would actually like question the person and say, why don't you go and say that to Pej?
Yeah.
Why would you come and put that into my head? Because and the next day he actually did say that to him, and he said, you made me start to question this guy, and like that wasn't, like, that's not fair. Like, what? He goes, well, I heard it from somebody else. So it's just people talk, and I think a lot of people see people that are high performers or people that really truly help a lot of people, and so I don't even want to say the word jealous, but like people think to themselves, like, because the guy conducts himself this way or looks that way or acts that way, or because he's got a lot of people around him, he must be a body broker. And like, truth of the matter is if whoever was running their mouth saying that shit really knew on the back end what I do when it comes to real life body brokers, and how a lot of places either get put under investigation or shut down, or certain people do get in trouble as a result of body brokering. And a lot of people won't even know that are watching this, like, what a body broker is, but it's a person that pays people to get into treatment, or they sometimes get people high, or will do certain things to get people into treatment, but that's doing it the wrong way. And so if only that person knew, like, the fact that I have worked with law enforcement, and I won't say who, but they're like the gnarly law enforcement people that really, really go after these people. If they only knew like what I do on the back end, and I talk about this often. Like, I hate that type of lifestyle and those types of people. Not to say like they're bad people. I think they're just caught up, and they're about that fast money, and they're about living a shady lifestyle in their so-called recovery lifestyle, right? So. Yeah.
I mean, body brokering, by the way, here, Massachusetts, nobody plays that. Like, I have plenty of connections out here in the Northeast. Right. As you know, I might be able to help you with a couple people, well-known people, to get on your podcast, maybe.
Sure.
But that isn't a thing here. And the bigger thing here is like, I didn't even know what a body broker was until like a few years ago. And somebody said to me something about like, I get paid per head in bed.
Right.
I was like, I don't even know what that means. Like,
right.
I earn a salary, and I probably, at the end of the day, probably earn like $10 an hour because I work 24/7.
Sure.
So good for you if you want to go and do that.
Right.
But like, don't ever speak to me again. When it comes to like our own recovery and going to meetings and things like that, I mean, there's no way that I would go to a meeting and approach somebody unless they like truly, like, I try and keep my own recovery separate from what I do. Of course, I'm going to give them my phone number, but if that person needs to go to treatment and they have state funded insurance, I don't care if their parents are millionaires. They can utilize that state funded insurance, or they can walk into the Department of Transitional Assistance and get emergency mental health, and you can go to treatment.
Right.
For me, that topic really like hit me hard because I'm not from California, or I'm not from Florida. I can't even say Florida. But like I'm not from that environment, and I'm not from like where these like 22-year-old grimy kids are out here. Like, let me help you.
Yeah.
I'm used to real professionals that have worked in this industry, have licenses and degrees, and like clinically, like they really truly care. And I'm so grateful that that's who I learned from. And I don't know. I like, some kid reached out to me one time about like saying that he got paid separately than I did from like what the work I did. And I'm like, I have no idea what you're even speaking of.
Right.
This is like so foreign to me. And of course I sent it to my boss, and I was like, I don't even know what this means. But like, body brokering out here doesn't happen. However, you go that movie that came out that everybody saw.
I actually had that guy on the director of that movie. I had him on here.
Yeah. I mean, the BD rep in there overdosed and died. Right. So very sad, but like that kind of reality, if you ever get the chance to come out to like Massachusetts or like this area, you will not see that like
Right.
at all, because it doesn't, like, people are just so,
It doesn't exist out there. It doesn't
yeah,
exist.
it doesn't
And even,
exist.
you know what's crazy is even after Trump signed the ECRA law and made it illegal for people to pay per client to put them into treatment,
Yeah.
it's still happening. I mean, it's not happening to the as much as it was back then, but it's still happening. It's happening in California. It's still happening in Florida. So there are people that live in the underbelly of the beast still. But
I would love to meet them and have a great conversation with them. Like, I'll fly out for that.
we can make arrangements.
I will.
I love what you're doing. We're on two different coasts. I know you help a lot of people. I appreciate you. I appreciate you coming out here today. If you got some of those people that would like to be on this podcast now that you've been on, and they ask you, well, how does it go down, or what do you do, and this and that, here you go. You had it. Like, we've touched on so many things, and you help a lot of people. I believe that today, like, I think the people that I saw tuned in, a couple of them were. This lady said, working mothers have a unique challenge in this day and age. So many expectations we put on ourselves. So many expectations from society. Pills are an easy addiction to hide from our loved ones. Not really something soccer moms talk about and can reach. Rada Sputo said, addicts abuse coffee, so stimulants are a given. This gentleman, Wu Ming, said, only watched a little bit, but really like what you guys are doing here. Really like her story too. Yeah. So
Yeah, I didn't even see any comments. Sorry, guys.
Oh, you couldn't see the comments?
Yeah, I'm not like, since I don't do podcasts, I'm not used to it, but like, I'm so happy that if it helps anybody, I'm happy to help anybody.
You did wonderful.
Guidance. So
I appreciate you. Thank you for coming on today, and have a good rest of your day.
Thanks for convincing me.
We'll be talking soon. You already know that.
We better be.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Talk to you later. Bye.
I'll talk to you later. Bye.